Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi barakatuh, everybody. This is your main man, Preacher Boss. Welcome back to another edition of the Shoutout Show with me, your host, Preacher Boss. Listen, as always, I want to invite the new people. I want to say thank you for coming. For the people that come and check us out on the regular, thank you for supporting the show. Your support is appreciated and needed. Today is a different show. Yesterday we did funny Ramadan stories, but this one cuts a little bit close to home. It has to do with the ecosystem of your house in the present conditions or in present environment, if you will, of COVID-19. I'm calling this show, brothers and sisters, dealing with the stuck in the house blues. Now, you know what I'm talking about, the stuck in the house blues. That means the people in your house, you love them, you die for them, but right about now, some days you just can't stand them. Maybe it's the way they suck their teeth. Maybe it's the way they chew their food. Maybe it's the way they talk to you, they go, it's anything and everything. We love them, but now you've been spending an inordinate amount of time, forced time, with these people, and you're having to adapt. That's part of the stuck in the house blues. Now, let me even explain a little bit further. It's not like being in prison. You got mobility and things like that. But you're dealing with a situation and you don't know when you're going to get out. At least when you go to prison, they have an idea when you're eligible for parole or early release. At this point in time, we don't know who's going to be able to get out, who's going to be able to come in. We don't know. But those things stated, there's got to be love in the house. So whatever you're going through, there's love in the house. You love that person before this virus hit. You love them now. You just got to redirect it and you got to repurpose it a little bit. So that takes a little bit of creativity. Now, when I say a little bit of creativity, I'm not saying lying, though you might want to do that. I'm saying looking at folks and saying, hey, listen, our relationship has changed based on the fact that we're dealing with a certain amount of difficulties, if you will. We're dealing with a certain amount of stress, if you will, whether it be the job, whether it be our health. We're dealing with some things. Let me give us a quick shout out. This is my big sister, lover, Sister Leia. Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi barakatuh. Brother Ahmed, hey man, thank you for coming. I don't know where you're tuning in from, but thank you for being a part of the show. So let me continue on the idea of stuck in the house blues, and I'm going to give you guys some creative understanding of where you are, why you're feeling this way. No one wants to do things that they don't want to do. Plain and simple. No one wants to be forced to do things they want to do. That's the idea of laws. Laws enforce behavior. We have a situation where this is not a law. This is a condition. A pandemic is changing and forcing behavior. Well, you're going to have to deal with that. We're all human beings at some point in time. You know, everybody has no mobility. You have no rights. You're dealing with a pandemic. It's almost like being a black man in 1950. That's what it feels like. So let me move on from that. Here are some things that I think may be able to help in this situation. You got to have some meetings with your family. You got to have some meetings with your family. When I say meetings, I'm like, you have a constituency. You're like, I travel a lot. And when I come home, I have to readjust. I have to reintroduce myself to people. Well, when you're stuck in a house a long time, you got to reintroduce yourself to people in the house. Different situations, different scenarios. Sometimes it's taking on different roles. Maybe you don't cook. Maybe this week you cook. Maybe you don't wash. Maybe this week you wash. Maybe you don't help the kids with the homework. This week you do help the kids with the homework and they get it all wrong. It doesn't matter. It was the intention that was good. So let me explain something about what's going on. Sister C, what about stuck in the house blues, travel? We all want to move around. In the Muslim community, what's interesting, we are a very vibrant community. However, the crux of our vibrant community is being able to be mobile in and around different communities. We like mobility. Muslims love mobility. You can call it, go back to the days of Ibn Khaldun, talking about the brothers in the desert who you know, they were travelers in the desert. You know, these folks. Nobody likes to be stuck in one place on purpose. So when you're talking about the stuck in the house blues, Sister Leila, let me give you some tips that if you don't know them, you probably already, if you don't know them, they'll help. And if you know them, they'll really help. One of the aspects of the stuck in the house blues is this right here. It is the idea that moving around has two components. Two components. Number one, mentally moving around. Number two, physically moving around. The one that counts the most is the mentally moving around. You have to be able to create spaces for people, new spaces for people to be able to do things. It's sort of like business back in the day. They ran out of business, so they decided to come up with the internet, things you can't see. And then they sold website domains, things you can't see. Your name now exists and they kept creating these spaces. I'm saying, for the purposes of your loved ones and your marriages, brothers and sisters, you're going to have to create some of those same spaces. And I'll tell you why. Real talk. One of the things that happened with the COVID virus is this. Because it was so abrupt, and in many opinions, it was handled so poorly, we lent ourselves to believe that people who normally let us down were going to all of a sudden be rational. They were not rational. They were themselves. And so sometimes that belief and that hope brings on a sense of regret. You got to let the regret go. Okay? The problem is COVID. Not how people deal with it, it's how we deal with it. That's number one. Number two is, because of the span and the depth of this particular pandemic, what I've understood is we didn't have a lot of time to pivot. And when I say pivot, I mean we had to make a choice right then and there. We had to get in and change our minds, and we're going to do this, my job, da 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 da. One thing that's been overlooked is the human capacity to have to sit back and grieve. We, as a nation, have not been allowed to grieve. It really hit me when I was looking at some of the funerals that were happening, and particularly in New York, where people who were diagnosed or the diagnosis or the, I guess the autopsy said they died of COVID-19 or something related to COVID-19. You know, an interesting thing was watching the families not be able to have a full janazah, a full funeral. And that's a physical manifestation. We're looking at death. I'm talking about for us who are living. We have not engaged in most cases in a proper grieving process. It's almost like the stages of death, right? Acceptance, denial, blah, 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 regret. You have anger, all those things. We're not necessarily doing that. And I'm not saying go through these stages like that, but at least being able to acknowledge it, because that's where you're going to be coming from an emotional base at any point in time. I remember going to the mailbox and got mad at the mailbox. I don't know why. The mailbox never done anything to me. The mailbox been a friend. It's bought me a lot of payments and bought me a lot of bills. But the mailbox is an inanimate object. And from the mailbox, I derived a certain feeling. I was in my feelings about the mail person. All of a sudden, the mail person wasn't bringing the mail on time. And I addressed the mail person, and about halfway into it, I realized this is the dumbest thing I've done in a long time. The lady brings the mail. It just happens that I've been home over a period of time where all I could do is what? Wait for the mail to come. Well, I apologized to the mail lady, and I told her, listen, this is where I am in my life. This is where you are. And the lady said through her mask, I understand. And she pulled it back up. And I think we need to lighten up a little bit. We need to lighten up a little bit, because I feel like sometimes we're going a little bit off the rails. That's Big Brother right there, Imam Hanafi. Love you, man. Tell Imama, give him my love. But I think we as a culture, particularly as Muslims, need to look at some of these things, because I'm here to tell you, wow, I'm sorry to hear that, Brother Sergeant. Wow. You're going to make the wow for that. Utah's Muslim community had its first COVID-19 death a few days ago. Well, Allah be with that family, man. But even in that space that the brother just shared, it's a process. The question is, are we willing to engage our process? You know, I remember I went to a janazah one time, and I was shocked, because it was like my first janazah. You know what I mean? You fresh in the deen, your first janazah, and I stuck around, and it was so orderly. like it was orderly. Like they brought the casket in, and I heard some some tears, but it wasn't, it wasn't what I'm used to. Uh, when I grew up, people be falling out over the casket. Lord Jesus, don't take them. And then they're like, Lord, it meant everything to me, And I mean, it'd be loud and it'd be emotional and things like that. And I was like, what is the difference between the two? Well, they say in Islam, you can grieve for a certain period. In the church, you just grieving, period, till you feel better or till you get tired and go to sleep. It's one of the two, brothers and sisters. It's one of the two. My point is, in that tradition, the Christian tradition, grieving is important. In our tradition, grieving is important. We talk about it for those who have left us, those who have passed away, they've returned to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I'm talking about for those of us who are here. And man, Hanafi could probably add some information to this, but it is important that those of us that are here, we draw lessons and we repurpose what we're going through. Oh, here we go. Here you go. This big brother shot in the hood. All right. There you go. Tell Tyrone I got him covered. All right, I got him covered. Don't be like that. Good to see you, Big B. But I'm talking about this whole thing of staying in the house blues. Listen, if you don't have a porch, make a porch. If you don't have a stoop, make a stoop. Imagine a stoop. I don't care if you got to be like the breakdancers, take some carpet out in front of your house. Create a new space for you not to be in that house. Take a walk. Go talk to a neighbor that you don't like, from a distance, of course. But my point is, we have to be able to understand these things a lot clearer than what we're doing. We can't do it like everybody else. Waiting for COVID is not going to happen. It's not going to knock on your door. It's a hit or miss. We can't act like we have COVID. We can act like we want to avoid it. We want to prevent it. That's all well and good. But you can't act sick. In the mind, I'm realizing a lot of things. I'm realizing that, some of us were not as tough as we thought we were. We're not as tough as we thought we were. We're not as smart as we thought we were. We're just not. And that's fine. Because the other part about this situation is accepting yourself for who you are, where you are. I found that I'm a terrible shopper during COVID. I buy the wrong things and I bring them home. People look at me like I got 2 heads and 6 backs. It doesn't matter. I buy stuff I don't need. I'm serious. I went to the grocery store. You know what about people? Beans. I bought beans. I can't cook beans. It just looked like the beans were lonely. Like the beans were on the shelf like, hey, nobody loves me. Like if it was an orphanage for beans, these beans would have been an orphanage. And I felt like I was doing foster care instead of actually doing grocery shopping. And I took the beans home. And I did cook them. I mean, I'm not stupid. You know what I'm saying, blah. But my point is, the stay in the house blues shouldn't be stay in the house. It should turn around, repurpose it. It's like stay in the house and celebrate. Stay in the house and be inspired. Stay in the house and be educated. Stay in the house and be close. Because we take the blues part, and I'm just saying, some people got the blues like it's all bad. Look, I toured with Coco Taylor and a blues machine when I was 17 years old. She was a blues singer, but that was the best time I ever had. She sang about the blues, but she didn't live the blues. Right? She sang about the blues, she didn't live the blues. This whole thing about staying in a house also needs to be about staying on an idea, staying on some ideas, staying on the fact we need to be healthy, staying on the fact we need to follow these rules that are out here to protect our safety. Some people are walking around like there ain't no thing. Look, I don't trust anybody. I don't trust anybody when it comes to my health. And, these days, you can't trust people when it comes to your health. You are the best barometer of where your health is and where it needs to be. Staying in the house is also a blessing for some folks. Because you know what? Some folks really need to address how they're living in their health. Because you would have been walking around, so it's not a bad thing. Some of you have been walking around, you're not in the best of health. And I ain't gonna lie, I grew up in a black household, believe it or not. And to this day, my father was the first one to say, you know what, son, you don't look good. Let's go to the hospital. I was like, the hospital? You mean where they got doctors? Word? Not the clinic, the doctor? He's like, the doctor. I was like, what is white people? He's like, mm-hmm. All right, I'm from that generation. But I'm also from the generation whereby we had home remedies. You stayed in the house because you were sick. We had home remedies. I'm going to tell this story, man. I can get away with it because the person who is the focal point of the story is no longer here with us. May Allah be pleased with him. He is my grandfather, Clifford Moss Sr. I'm going to tell you a story about being in the house and being sick. Want to hear it? Here we go. I was all of 6 years old, contracted a really, really bad cough, like amazing bad cough. And I mean, it was bad. So my parents were going out of town. They had some event planned. And the idea was for me to stay at my grandmother's house. And they would watch me while my parents went on and did their thing. No problem. I was getting over a really, really massively bad cough. You know, when kids have those little coughs, they cough like they've been working in a mine somewhere for like 20 years, like that. I had that cough. So basically, I'm staying at my grandmother's house. Ironically, the weekend I'm supposed to stay with them, they had a shopping trip planned going to someplace out in Reading, Pennsylvania. It was a big bus trip. So it leaves me and my grandfather in the house together. We're watching the Flintstones because we got out like that. Watching the Flintstones. And from my belly button as a child, a cough came up. It was like, it sounded like a foghorn. I'm just coughing like a 102-year-old man. And my grandfather is annoyed. He gives me one of these looks, like the COVID cough look like. And he goes, boy, I'm sick of you having that cough. I was like, sir, that's all you could say back in the day when you were 6 or 7. When an elder addressed you, all you could say was, sir. I was like, yes, sir. He's like, we're gonna take care of that cough. That's never that didn't sound like medical terms. We're gonna take care of that cough. I'm like, I'm scared, but I can't say anything because I'm 6 or 7. Fast forward on the day, I've coughed a couple more times. He's lost it. We can't watch the Flintstones. He goes, get up, come on with me. And I'm like, all right, Grandpa. And we walk. He goes, I'm gonna take care of that cough. I'm thinking, I'm a suburb kid. My daddy took me to the hospital. I saw white people. Grandpa's gonna hook it up. I'm thinking I got a cough. 1 and 1 equals 2. I'm thinking cough. He's gonna give me some cough syrup. People, we walk past the bathroom, past the medicine cabinet. I'm like, well, this is not good. We kept walking. Eventually, I looked up and we were at his tool shed. And I'm like, this doesn't look like the clinic or the hospital, but I'm 6 or 7. I can't say anything. So I'm like, all right. He says, boy, hold this spoon. And I got a spoon and he put some sugar on it. And then he pulled down some turpentine. Now, I read the words turpentine. I didn't necessarily know what it meant to have turpentine, but the skull and the crossbones on the side of it said, Negro, you shouldn't drink it. But Grandpa put it on there, and he said, go ahead, take that. Now, I didn't want to be disrespectful. He is my grandfather. So I tried to be intellectual with him and lead him into a conversation of rational thought. I said, Grandpa, isn't this the stuff you use to take the paint off the side of the shed? He said, yes, sir. I said, well, on the bottle, it says that crossbones, like it could kill you. And he looked at me with a straight face and all the love in the world. He goes, boy, don't be silly. It can only kill you. It can only kill you a little bit. I was like, well, it can only kill you a little bit. I was like, okay, all right. So, all right. He told me to take it, and I took it. And I want to tell you that I was healed, but that'd be a lie. The fact of the matter is, I was scared to death. In fact, to be honest with you, I did not sleep the whole night. 2 things. I was like, I'm not going to fall asleep because I'm worried about not waking up. That was number 1. And number 2 was, no matter how bad this cough got, if it came back, I was not going to cough in front of this black man ever again. Ever again. That's my word. I put that on my mama. I was like, I am not going to cough in front of this man again. And so when the morning came, I've been up all night. scared to death because I thought I was going to die. That's number one. Number two is he's coming around. I still got the cough, and I figured out how to, I'm not coughing out. So my grandfather's like, "Hey, boy, come on down and get some eggs." And I'm like, "All right." He's cooking too. Hope he's not making. I said, he's cooking too. I hope he isn't cooking with turpentine or kerosene because that's the way it was going yesterday. So we have breakfast and everything, and truth be told, the turpentine and sugar actually worked. I didn't cough. I want to say it worked. I believe it worked, but mentally I might have been playing tricks on myself. But in any event, I didn't, but even still, the stigma was there. The stigma was there. So my point was, for the rest of my life, I never coughed around my grandfather. So for the next 10 years, I never coughed around that man because I feared getting a tablespoon of turpentine and sugar. And then the worst part about it, I even snitched to my dad about it. He was like, "Boy, what's wrong with you?" I was crying. He said, "What's wrong with you?" I said, "Granddaddy tried to kill me." He said, "What'd he do?" I said, "I was coughing and he gave me some turpentine and sugar." My dad goes, "Is that all he gave you? He didn't give you any castor oil?" I said, "You Negroes are crazy." But that's not to underscore the fact that I had a great relationship with my grandfather. And we talk about being stuck in the house. As he became older, he couldn't get out of the house as much. He wasn't as mobile. But we found ways to repurpose things. Watching the Flintstones, maybe reading the paper to him, just coming to visit, doing things around the house. It was a beautiful relationship. And when he passed away, I was sad. He passed away. I love the old guy, Clifford Moss Sr. You call him Big Cliffy. I loved him. And I remember the community coming out to pay homage to my grandfather. And people were saying beautiful things about him. And, and I felt a sense of pride. And, I love this guy. And I looked up in the casket when I saw him laid out, and I just wanted to say my little piece to my grandfather. So when nobody was around, I looked down and I leaned in the casket. And this is what I said. I said, I had been holding that for 10 years, people. That's the way it goes. I finally coughed around him. And I've been coughing ever since. So I'm not saying if you get COVID, take turpentine and sugar, but it won't hurt. Okay, so listen. You know how I keep the show, brothers and sisters. I try and keep the show short. Number one, because I figure out you have things to do. That's number one. Number two, I want to be respectful of your time. And the other fact of it is, listen, being stuck in the house is not a bad thing. It's a blessing. There are a lot of people who don't get enough time to spend with their families. So don't look at it like that. Some of y'all are mad, go to sleep with your fist balled up. No, let it go. Properly grieve, move on. I got some shout outs I want to do for my people. I'm going to shout out everybody who was on. Layla, thank you. I'm going to show you. Layla, thank you. Man Hanafi, thank you. Brother Sajid, all the way out in Utah. I love you, man. Bilal, you're my homie. I'm gonna do a show just about a Bilal International one day. Because it's funny how we met. But I'm gonna do it one day. And tell Tyrone he got $40 coming. Now listen, shout out to everybody. Just try to remember some of the things I talked about today. When you feel that anxiety, that stress building up, you know what that is? That's the importance, or that's the need sometimes to grieve a little bit and let it go. This situation is temporary. It's not forever. That's number one. Number two is you got a lot to smile about. All right? A lot to smile about. And I'm telling you, smile. It's not like somebody made you take a tablespoon of turpentine and sugar. I'm Preacher Moss. This is Shoutout Show. See you tomorrow. Same preach time, same preach channel. 5 o'clock Central, 6 o'clock Eastern Time. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Stay away from the turpentine and sugar. Peace.